Hey everyone, Jasmine Garcia here again, Senior Business Resource Manager for our ChiBizHub initiative at World Business Chicago. I'm really enthusiastic to be here today to share with you a story of Mr. Osvaldo Montelongo, who is the founder of ConnectCareHero here in Chicago. He's going to tell us all about his story, but most importantly, we talk a lot about our small business owners and entrepreneurs here in the ecosystem. And I think we have yet to talk about someone who's in the life sciences space. And right now, as we're leading into recovery, one of our top high growth industries in Chicago is the life sciences space. So it's going to be a really exciting time for you to learn a little bit about, again, Osvaldo Montelongo, him, the ConnectCareHero business. And then, just to learn a little bit more about, why he's so passionate about the 65 plus aging population, because if many of you don't know, we actually have a high number of nursing care facilities in Chicago. So it's really, really important. Thank you, Osvaldo, for being with us here today. I want to kick it off and ask you a couple of questions so our audience gets to know a little bit more about you and your business. So to get us started, Osvaldo, what inspired you to embark on this entrepreneurial journey? And what communities do you serve within the city of Chicago? Similarly, what gaps are you trying to fill in our community with ConnectCareHero?
Yeah, no, first, Jasmine, thanks so much for having me. So what inspired me to start ConnectCareHero? It actually came from a personal experience. But before I get into that, I'll kind of backtrack and kind of give some background here. So I'm first generation Latino from Mexico, a pueblo called San Luis Potosí, a state called San Luis Potosí, Ciudad Valles. And my family came here in the 80s, first generation, the whole experience. And one thing I always tell people is that, if you know anything about Latinos is that the word nursing home or, dementia doesn't even exist in our vocabulary. We don't even know what that is. And so my dad had me later in life. He had me at 57 years old. And so early on, I really had to, experience, I'll call it aging care, senior living care from an early age. When I was in my 20s, I had to make the very, very hard decision to move my dad to a nursing home because I was the only one taking care of him in Chicago. And once that happened, it really kind of just opened my eyes to what it's like to be a loved one or a family member in a nursing home setting here in Chicago, but also what it's like for a loved one like my dad, first generation Latino, doesn't speak any English, all he knows is about the farm and all that. And what really kind of inspired me was just seeing him even though he was one of hundreds of older adults in his community, he was very lonely, very isolated, very depressed because he wasn't getting the programming he really needed. And that in itself, the first time the light bulb went on was when I brought my dad a tamale making session. So I brought him and a couple of his Latino friends there. I was like, hey, let's make some tamales, so we actually made tamales in person. It was a hit. They were talking about that for months. And that really kind of led me to kind of start create ConnectCareHero because it really was really touching when you can see older adults, 80-year-old Latino men enjoying programming and lighting up and talking about it, which was really uncommon in the Medez community. And so that's really what kind of inspired me. It's how can I bring this at scale for senior living organizations? But yeah, that's kind of the original, inspiration behind ConnectCareHero was my dad. And then what was the second question again?
Yeah, the part about kind of what areas in Chicago are you trying to address?
Yeah, and so when we look at our mission at the end of the day is to help provide better experiences for older adults. Doesn't matter, what background they're from. But one thing that we really try to do is we know that, brown and Black communities, especially older adults, they don't get the programming that they need. They're always under-resourced. So, we're trying to help reach communities, right? My dad was in the back of the yards neighborhood at the time, and give those type of communities the right resources, right, that they can provide a very personalized experience for their population. And it doesn't matter if it's just one, right? We have it for them. So that's kind of one of our goals is to help reach underserved communities in Chicago through our programming.
Thank you for that, Osvaldo. I always appreciate interviewing, for folks from our Black and Brown communities and just really the entrepreneurial community right in Chicago. But I feel that in every business, there's always this personal story and personal connection, personal experience that you've had that then leads to this great idea. And, I love that we just kind of don't just sit there and think, oh, maybe this is just happening to me. Like it ends up impacting so many different lives, right? So major kudos to you for definitely filling that gap, right? So I kind of alluded to this earlier in the introduction of our interview, but I really truly believe you're contributing to something much larger within this ecosystem. So can you tell us how the advancements in technology are leading to a sort of health revolution in terms of access to equitable care specific to our community?
Yeah, so the ecosystem is changing, and obviously the pandemic has only helped accelerate a lot of the tech adoption across the space. I will say that senior living communities, underserved communities have been tech less for a long time, and they're now understanding more clearly what the gravity of not addressing I call it quality of life measures, right? Are you socially connected? Do you have access to transportation? Do you have access to food? Do you have, access to internet, right? Those four right there, are very key to addressing how well you'll live and how long. And so one of the things that we see now is there's a lot of tech adoption, right? Trying to engage on those four topics that are alone. What we're trying to do is help with the social isolation piece, right? I always say this with my dad. If you ask my dad, a 40-year farmer in Mexico, doesn't speak any English, he's like, Mr. Montelongo, ¿cómo te sientes? How do you feel? And he'd be like, bien. But when you actually saw him, he was actually telling you a different story, right? He wasn't enjoying it. He was actually on the verge of depression and isolation. So I think, there's a revolution going on. And this is kind of what we're trying to lead the front on, is we want to be an open door for organizations, nursing homes, home care groups, health plans, and more, to be able to provide personalized programming for underserved communities and anyone at the end of the day, to get them into programs that they actually may like. But more importantly, give them data that's very predictive to rising risk, who are the most at risk, so they can deploy the right measures before it's too late.
Wow, that's remarkable. Thank you. I'm left speechless, but what I really like about your answer is how you focused on the quality of life piece. I know when I first moved to Chicago, I was completely blown away. There's this like crazy statistic. I think each neighborhood or street is like in 5 or so mile radius of a park. And that contributes to, again, like the quality of life, everything just that's surrounding you. And it's the reason why so many businesses and headquarters are moving to Chicago, because of the vibrancy within the neighborhoods, within downtown, just everywhere, in terms of what it means for your quality of life. So that means you also have a great workforce to pick from, right? So that's really good for highlighting that. In that same token, I alluded to this, top 5 growth industries in Chicago, health services and technology, life sciences being one of them. Chicago, for many of you who don't know, also holds some of the highest number of nursing care facilities, general hospitals, and med tech companies. How do you see yourself partnering or engaging with the med tech sector in Chicago?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the best way I explain this is that, I feel like our hospital systems are just health system providers at the end of the day, even the med tech space. What they do really well and they're making great advancements on is the medical side, right? But when it comes to like going back to these quality measures, right? These, that lead to better quality of life. I think that's where we can find some partnerships with groups that are leading the medical side to be like, hey, you take the medical, we'll help take the social isolation and other pieces, to in a way be a front door, right? I think one of the biggest opportunities for us is really doing partnerships with the great medtech ecosystem here in Chicago, and helping kind of deliver on those pieces, right? The social engagement piece, the social isolation piece. I think one of the things that I see happening is that there's more focus going on, especially now after the pandemic, on that quality of life piece, where sometimes we don't have unlimited resources, right? So how do you best deploy it to communities that really need it? But you need to know who the most at risk are, right? And I always say my dad was one of millions of older adults, Latinos, right, that were in their 80s, didn't really like to socialize unless it was something he was actually interested in. And so we want to kind of be that front door for med tech or any groups to say, hey, we'll get them in, provide the right information we need that is valuable to you med tech groups. And we both, it's a win-win at the end of the day.
I love it. I love it. This is yet another opportunity, right? How the environment that has been fostered, the entrepreneurial community in Chicago, really provides that environment for an entrepreneur like you, small business owner like you, to be successful. So I hope any, aspiring entrepreneur that's out there is kind of listening to this and just seeing, how they fit within this ecosystem. So to address a little bit more about, you being Latinx, identifying as a Latinx small business owner, what do you think has proven most challenging in starting your business? And how have you been able to overcome those obstacles?
Yeah, I think great question. I think this is one of the things I'm very passionate about now. It's trying to help pave the road for people behind you, one or two steps behind you, right? Because when I first got into the tech space, it was 2016. Had no idea who was in the space, let alone like Latino, Latinas, paving the way until you get into it, right? And then you start meeting the right people. But one of the most difficult things is obviously everyone hears it, funding. Like, how do you get the right funding opportunities, whether it's through grants, through angels, or through VCs? Just because historically, even myself, right, I'm first generation Latino from from my family's from the farm, and it's we don't have network of capital, and it's one of those things that was one of the most challenging things. So what we ended up doing was just bootstrapping it. And, little by little, the growth at first was really small, but I think that's kind of, that's what you have to do as a Latinx entrepreneur. It's like, just build it out, prove it out, get traction. Cause, sometimes we don't have the funding, it's hard to test everything. Right. And so I think that was one of the hardest things. And looking back now, I think one of the things I would have done sooner was just gain mentorship. I think right away. Mentors that were a few steps ahead of me, which now I'm grateful I found, a good handful that definitely can quickly say, hey, do you have a second? Can I chat with you, give you some feedback on this? And also just, developing great relationships now with the investor community. Happy to say, we developed some great relationships, and, I will look to, announce in the near future. But it's definitely something that, they've helped us a ton. I can't, there's groups that come to mind right now that have led the way for us when it comes to learning how the investment space looks like, how it works, what they're looking for. Yeah, it took a while first.
I love it. That's great. And something else that I really liked about you highlighting was this mentorship component. I think sometimes, and it might be a cultural thing, right? We get in this mindset of like, no, I'll figure it out. I'll do it by myself. Like, this is what I want to do. But it's really, I think there's an aspect of vulnerability of just leaning in into like, hey, no, they're here to help you. And I think there's a lot of us within our community that have, I don't want to say like made it, but definitely have experience and wisdom to be able to share on others. So I think that's awesome. You've had that experience, and I already see it in your background. You're kind of giving back, as well. So, that's what it's all about. To a little bit more lighthearted question. What do you enjoy most about being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, there's a ton of things that come to mind right now. I think, obviously for the most typical stuff is like, being able to, build your own business. I think at the end of that's one of the most rewarding things, right? You start from nothing, you build something. That in itself is powerful. But I think when I look at ConnectCareHero and what we've been able to do in this health and sciences space, is that, being able to make a difference in the lives of like people like my dad, right? My dad's no longer with us anymore, but being able to say, I've made a smile with an older adult, and have them enjoy a little bit of their day. Because I've been there. Me and my dad, I used to go see my dad every single day, before work and after work. And then after that, I would do ConnectCareHero. And, being able to be in those 4 nursing home walls and seeing that, it's very lonely. I mean, once you're there, some people might, like my dad's neighbor, never got visited in 2 years when I was there. And so the most rewarding thing for me is really saying, how can I help people like them and my dad just enjoy their time a little bit better? So for me, that's super rewarding. Be able to create a company like this to make a difference really just energizes us. So.
Thank you for that, Osvaldo. That's touching. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think your passion clearly drives you and your family experience, right? So share with us, what's next for your company? How do you plan to scale your business in the next 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, so these next few years are going to be exciting. Like I said, we're going to do some announcements in the near future here, but we're definitely looking for high growth over the coming years. We're looking to reach a ton more older adults with our technology. At the end of the day, being able to kind of elevate what it means to provide personalized programming with data-driven insights. And so I think the next few years we're going to be able to see a lot of growth, expand into different verticals. Obviously, right now we work with senior living communities, but we are getting into home care, and over the next few years, our goal is really to kind of expand our services to other sectors, such as like health plans, employee benefits, and so forth, where we see a lot of potential.
I love it. And just a point of clarification, are you currently only serving the Chicago community, or do you plan on hitting national if you aren't already?
Yeah, so another thing, we are going to go national as well. We right now are serving the Illinois area. We are now expanding into markets on the East Coast. So we are expanding. The next few years, we will look to do more expansions in different states across the country, and who knows, even across the pond. So.
Wow, talk about growth right there, right? So for those interested, I feel like by the time of this interview, folks are curious, if those are interested in interacting with your platform or how to use it, how might they be able to connect with you?
Yeah, so anyone that's interested, whether you're an owner or a life enrichment director for a community that works with older adults, they can go to our website at www.connectcarehero.com. There is a contact us page or get started, and just fill it out and we'd reach out to you, provide a demo, and see how we can help enhance experiences.
Perfect. Thank you, Osvaldo. It's been a really great time. To close us out, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to share maybe any parting words, advice you have for our aspiring entrepreneurs or newly established small business owners.
Yeah, so any aspiring entrepreneurs, this phrase I've been kind of using a lot lately, but it's one of these ones that it's as a startup entrepreneur, sometimes you have this idea of this experience, this unique insight that you've experienced, but it's a new space, right? Our space was new at the time when I started, but you kind of want to paint the picture to people like, hey, this is where the space is going, right? So this is where the puck is going. And I think, being able to do that effectively, it really provides a lot of value, and you can definitely get a lot of momentum and support behind it when you can clearly articulate that. So it's one of those things that I always, recommend people is like, if you're in a new space, just paint where the puck is going, paint where the space is going, and then, the right people will join you.
I love it. Well, again, I want to thank you for joining us today, for sharing your story, sharing your incredible business, and kind of how you're making strides here to fight isolation for our 65 plus community. I want to remind everyone, please follow us on social media at ChiBizHub.com. Thank you for joining us today. And I hope you gained something from this. We do these stories for you and to spotlight the community within the community. So thank you again for joining us.
Awesome.